You're hanging with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN FM.
Hey, you know what? There's another name you might know me by. Star-Lord.
And on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Who? Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw.
Streaming live on YouTube, Instagram, and the X platform.
Josh Hennig back here, hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle, and streaming live on YouTube and X in the Dr. Squatch virtual studios. Dan and EHC will get to your text and more a little bit later this hour, but right now, as promised, it is time to talk some fantasy football with my guy. Andy McNamara is back. Talk some football with him. We'll be doing this each week from now until the Super Bowl, or as long as Andy can tolerate me. My friend, welcome back. How you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing good, my man. I've tolerated you since 2019, so I think I can handle it.
I was saying before you came on, we've been doing fantasy football conversations for so long now. Yeah. So it's almost like part of the fabric at this point.
It is. And by the way, loving the new show, brother. You are killing it. It has been fantastic. I'm enjoying listening each week and happy to be back on with you.
So before we get to the fantasy football, I do got to ask you, because the Sick Podcast, your podcast, you talk Browns each and every week on the pod. The Browns, Shedeur Sanders looking pretty good last night. So I got to ask you, because in Philadelphia, we have concerns about our number 2 cornerback position, right? Keely Ringo, Adoree Jackson, they got shredded on Thursday night. So are the Browns going to be presenting the kind of challenge to test the Eagles' corners next Saturday?
Yeah, and a very important week for both clubs because it is the joint practices. They did this last year, 2 practices and the exhibition game. And for coaches now with the preseason games, we know you get the 3rd, 4th guys who aren't even going to be in the league. These joint practices, coaches are saying, are more valuable for the team for development than the games. Right. And so this is an important week to game plan, try different things. So I think it will be a good test for the Eagles secondary because mainly when Joe Flacco was back there dropping dimes, because this dude is just looking better and better and sharper, and he looks ageless right now. And his connection, man, with Jerry Jeudy and also David Njoku, it is looking fantastic. So that will be a test because, to stretch them downfield, see if they can handle it. So I think the Eagles will get some real value out of it.
What's funny about what you just said is that in years past, if you mention David Njoku, Eagle fans get nervous because the linebackers over the years. But we may have the best linebackers we've had in a long time in Philadelphia. Yeah. So it's like you're almost at the point where it's like, hey, the linebacker position is fine, but who on earth is going to be the corner across from Quinyon Mitchell? Obviously, Quinyon Mitchell will get the Jerry Jeudy assignment in a normal game, right? Whereas your competition is between Keely Ringo, Adoree Jackson, and now Jacorian Bennett. Although if you ask Vic Fangio, he played the audio before you came on, Fangio is doing the whole, well, it's a good learning experience for Keely Ringo. Then he gets asked about Bennett. It's like, we'll see.
You got to love Fangio, right? Just old school. Doesn't care. Doesn't care, right? Doesn't care. He's been in the league for 50 years. Okay, what are you going to do, right? He's fine. The thing is, for the Browns, outside of the 2 players that I mentioned with Jeudy and Njoku, gets thin real quick. So I don't know how much of a test it will be from a pure talent wide receiver on corner, but we know Joe Flacco can place the ball just about anywhere perfectly. So that'll be the challenge because after Jerry Jeudy at receiver, it gets dicey. You got battling for the number 2 spot, Deontay Johnson, who just got weird last year. Remember, we talked fantasy in real life. He was as reliable a possession receiver as you could get for several seasons. Then went to Baltimore, refused to play, got traded somewhere else that didn't play, got back to Texas, got back to Baltimore. And it's like, what are you doing? And it looks like, and I still think he is waiting to implode. But right now, it looks like maybe it has clicked in his head like, oh, if I want to continue my NFL career, I might want to stop being a jackass. That might be a great start. So he's kind of getting that figured out maybe for now. And after that is Cedric Tillman, who I got 2 of his autographed rookie cards. Might have went a bit heavy on that bite last season, Josh. But I still believe he is big. He's fast. He's a possession guy. had some concussion issues last year, has to stay on the field. The talent is there. So this will, again, for the Browns receivers, be a test. How do they look against these Eagles corners? So I think it's going to be, like I said, the Eagles corners might not get the test of elite receivers outside of Judy, but you have Flacco tossing the ball.
Flacco tossing the ball. Before we get to the fantasy football, yeah, Shedeur looked really, really good last night. I think you and I had this conversation a couple months ago, and I'm gonna want to like recycle it here real quick, because you and I both predicted that Dylan Gabriel was not going to make this team months ago. And I'm starting to see it now play out. What you and I thought was going to happen, that it looks like, if people keep talking about, they're going to have 4 quarterbacks. No. There'll be 3 quarterbacks in the roster, and Gabriel will be on the practice squad so Andrew Berry can save face. Because remember that according to the owner, your boy Jimmy Haslam drafting the quarterbacks of Gabriel and Sanders was Andrew Berry's idea, right? That was Berry's idea to draft these quarterbacks. Apparently, the owner didn't want him to. I don't know. I don't really care. But Jimmy's an odd individual. Maybe not as dumb as Jerry Jones is, but Jimmy's an odd individual.
Yeah.
But still, it's funny that Shedeur is looking like the guy. You remember the old Denny Green thing? They are who we thought they were. Well, Shedeur looks like who we thought he was.
I thought, and here's the thing, as we know, and people will say it's preseason, the defense is vanilla. We know all the cliches. You're playing second, third string people. We've seen Kenny Pickett light it up in preseason, and we know Kenny Pickett sucks, who's also on this team, by the way, right? Yes. So preseason to a point, I've seen going way back, Brandon Weeden, remember that name for the Browns? Looked fantastic in preseason. And the first week of his rookie year, you got trapped under the American flag. Doesn't always equate, is what I'm saying. But what I wanted to see is like, okay, you put the stats up. How did he command the huddle? How did he run the offense? How did he look in play action, which is a big part of this offense? And on one of the touchdowns, his play action, phenomenal. And that's something he said he had to work on. He dropped back, just had the nice pull, rolled out super smooth. I saw him directing traffic as I'm pointing. I saw him in and out of the huddle. And this is with backup linemen as well. So from that was more impressive to me than him throwing touchdowns, because if it's preseason, you're chucking it up. I thought he looked very smooth, very crisp, and settled down after coming in a little hot right away. First pass was high, he was zing, he was amped up. So the battle is this. Any national person you hear, okay, Josh, talking about Shedeur Sanders is going to win the starting job. Incorrect. I guarantee you that is not happening for week 1. Okay? Look at the Browns schedule. You want to run that gauntlet with a rookie? No, you want to run it with the seasoned, unflappable vet of Joe Flacco until the bye of week 9, barring injury. And then you figure out what might happen with Shedeur, whatever. The battle is for the backup spot. And Shedeur was 4th on the depth chart. I think from that game alone, with the hamstring injuries to Pickett and Gabriel, this is where he could start to climb. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Shedeur move up a spot. And to me, how he looked, I would feel very comfortable with the Flacco-Sanders 1-2. Give Pickett the boot. And I just don't think that they're going to – the more I think of it, Josh, I don't think that they're going to cut Gabriel because of what you said, saving face. I could see them letting Pickett go. But this is, again, a huge week for both Pickett and Gabriel in Philadelphia if they can get on the field, stay on the field, and look good.
To your point about the Browns' schedule, Bengals, Ravens, Packers, Lions. That's your first 4 weeks.
How's that treating you? You want a rookie doing that? I don't.
No.
I don't.
But that leads us to the first question for fantasy football, Andy, because let's start with your Browns, right? When you're looking at that schedule, is that a daunting schedule? Yes. But what do all those teams but one have in common, Andy? Not great defenses. So if you are a fantasy person, right, I am now – it looks like I'm going to be in 2 leagues. Of course, we are in the 97.3 ESPN lead together, Andy. Yep. You won 2 years ago the league championship.
Got my ring right
Andy's
there.
Ring on the screen. Last year was Nick Earnshaw. He won it last year. So we got some winners. I've won the league before. So, we are some winners around here.
You know what you're talking about.
But I got to tell you, Flacco, is he a guy that maybe – look, you're not drafting him high in your fantasy draft, but is he someone that maybe, like, the 12th round, let's say? Let's say you're looking for some quarterback options, and you see that you got the Bengals, you got the Packers, you got the Lions on that schedule. Is there a part of you that says, you know what, Flacco, fantasy football quarterback?
There is, in the sense that we know now, so many quarterbacks these days can get you some extra fantasy points with your legs. We know, like a Matthew Stafford, Flacco isn't doing that. If he's not getting you 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and probably a pick, it's not going to be a good fantasy day. But he can get those. And in the last stint with the Browns over those 5 weeks, 300-yard games all over the place. And so my strategy with Flacco for me would be I draft who I think my starting quarterback X is, get him. Then later, much later, maybe at the end, I always subscribe to the strategy of have 2 quarterbacks. Have your buy option on your roster instead of having to scramble it when your starting QB is on bye. I like to have that ahead of time. Same with the tight end. I like that strategy. So could Joe Flacco fill that role and then you kind of see how it goes? Absolutely. And you can get him late, right? So yes, I think for a quarterback as a backup on your fantasy, 5-week coverage, depending who you get, Joe Flacco right now is looking good.
Now, we all know who the best quarterbacks are in fantasy football. This isn't rocket science. Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. Everyone knows who the best quarterbacks are in football, Andy.
Yeah.
But once you get past those 4, what are you telling people to do? Because there's a lot of questions about, hey, Jalen Hurts, good fantasy quarterback, but he ain't Lamar in terms of putting up the stats, right?
Right.
Jared Goff, without Ben Johnson now, does that elevate Caleb Williams in the quarterback rankings, right? You got Jaden Daniels year 2. We saw what happened to C.J. Stroud in year 2, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of questions about these quarterbacks once you get past the top 4 names.
It's true. I think your Jaden Daniels comment, definitely relevant, would spook me a little bit. Doesn't mean he's off the table, but you have to keep that into account with the CJ Stroud factor. I think CJ Stroud actually elevates himself a little bit this year with the possibility of going into year 3 with some more weapons, with the knowledge and how smart he is. So I think CJ Stroud could rise a little bit. How about my old boy, little Baker Mayfield? Little 30 mil extension, new offensive coordinator. So a bit unproven there, but he's got the weapons coming off a career best year. Baker is cooking. And that's somebody, again, is that going to be my first choice as my starting fantasy QB? No. But if I'm filling out other position spots and I get a Baker and let's say maybe it's a Bo Nix or a Brock Purdy or even a Flacco later on, can I be comfortable with a Baker Mayfield, what he did last year? Yes, he is, I believe, a legitimate top 12 fantasy starting quarterback. So you got him. Now, like I said, I think Bo Nix could be sneaky good and probably isn't getting the feel that he should. I'm staying totally away from Justin Fields. I am flabbergasted I don't hear more about that the Jets are just punting on the quarterback position. Justin Fields has not done it at any level. And I like Justin Fields. He's a Buckeye. But he's not doing it. Okay, he's not doing it. It's not happening. So I think Justin Herbert is getting dropped down a lot. Did they add enough on offense? Maybe not, but if he's healthy, he's there. So those are a few names. And, of course, like an old reliable. People like to dump on Dak Prescott. But, look, that guy typically, if you look back over the fantasy years, can get you, when he's healthy, 4 rushing touchdowns and can pop up. And you look at the end of the year, you're like, oh, it was like QB8. I got him late. So those are the type of ones, if you don't get some of the big names, that's sort of the next level that can still be contributors and keep you comfortable in the fantasy world.
Talk with Andy McNamara, fantasy football expert. Of course, he's the host of the Sick Podcast. Like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast at AndyMC81 on the Twitter X platform for our weekly fantasy football conversation. To piggyback off of that, you mentioned Brock Purdy. Very interesting name for this reason, Andy. Good to very good real-world quarterback.
Yeah.
Maybe not as good fantasy quarterback. Talk about that part of this conversation because people go into their draft, maybe you know who Brock Purdy is, but he might not be the best option to help you win your fantasy league, whereas Kyler Murray might not win as many real-world games as Brock Purdy does, but a guy like Kyler Murray would be a better fantasy football option, right?
Right. Like Kyler Murray gives you a higher ceiling, maybe lower floor. Brock Purdy sneakily has been finished the QB 10 and QB 6 in fantasy points per game over the last 2 seasons. So this is a case of higher floor, lower ceiling. Probably somebody that you're going to look, and at the end of the day, get you around 18 fantasy points average per game. We're not getting the 50 that Lamar might get one week, but we're not getting the basement either. You were getting a steady flow. Geno Smith, I think, can fall into that category too. New team with Pete Carroll. So it really depends, again, what's your strategy going in? If you're gunning for Josh Allen, then you're going to have to take him pretty high. If you're building out the rest of your team and you think, I feel I can get by with one of those quarterbacks, a Brock Purdy who I can get later. And then if you do that again, couple up with another guy who's pretty steady, like a Geno Smith, or take a flyer on more of a boomer bust guy. But like, that's the type of thing. I'm in one keeper league that I have, that I won last year, actually, the Dynasty League. And I have Brock Purdy and Geno Smith. It's a 2 QB league. I got both those guys, and both were very even, very steady, and helped me because I didn't have to worry about them.
Right.
So it really depends on how you want. But yeah, you're right. Like, Brock Purdy isn't going to win you a fantasy league with blowout numbers, but he's definitely not going to lose it for you either. And he's going to keep you a nice high teen average.
All right. So with that being said, who is the quarterback that worries you for fantasy football? Like, who's the quarterback that, like, you know, they're a good quarterback, right? You know, maybe they're a guy that, like, you know, like, you're a Browns fan. You know, you might be like, yeah, I like that guy to be maybe my quarterback, but I don't want to be my fantasy quarterback.
Right. Yeah. Like, Patrick Mahomes is one that has so much name recognition, but is at this point in his career and this point in the Chiefs' development and just how they keep going is a better real world than fantasy. We've seen stretches where they'll win, but the fantasy numbers totally unspectacular. And we've seen the fantasy value drop. And you have to remember, too, his favorite target, Travis Kelce, has sort of matched that over the last couple years and is coming down. Doesn't mean he can't find anybody else. But during that last Super Bowl win, remember, halfway through the season, Andy Reid said, we need to go more run heavy and go that route. And the team's adaptable. They're going to do it. So Patrick Mahomes is somebody personally, like if he fell to some round, you know, 4th round and he's sitting there, I'll take him. But I personally do not want to have Patrick Mahomes as my fantasy quarterback at the price I'll have to go get him at. Because also, I don't think he's going to be consistent.
Also, don't forget the offensive line, not exactly improved from last year. Well,
that's a great point as well. So Patrick Mahomes falls in that realm there. We talked about Jane Daniels' upside, but is there going to be a step back? Caleb Williams, he's a flyer, but I just don't really believe in the player. They put everything around him. Better offensive line, I think he'll be better. But fantasy-wise, I want to pin my hopes to the Bears and Caleb Williams. I don't. And certainly somebody like a Trevor Lawrence, who I don't think too many people are high on, but, you know, name recognition sometimes goes, I'm going to have to see it to believe it before I buy into Trevor Lawrence.
See, you haven't named the guy who I think is a dark horse quarterback.
Okay? As far as being good or bad? Like
good. Like a good dark
who?
horse.
Who do you like?
Drake May. Because got Josh McDaniels now, a real offensive coordinator, a head coach who's just going to be like, hey, man, as long as you do your job, I don't care, you know, and it's like, and I can totally see a scenario where Drake May pops off this year with a new coordinator. You know, if Stephon Diggs is half the player we know he can be, right? Like, you know, if Diggs just goes out there and is solid, I mean, he's better than anyone the Patriots had at receiver last year.
Oh, so, sure. He's banged up a bit.
And listen, we saw, look at what Bo Nix did last year with a good coach in Sean Payton.
Yeah.
I think we all can agree that Drake May has more potential than Bo Nix does.
Oh, absolutely. I think Drake May has lots of potential. I sort of compared him coming out with the upside of like a Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And like a poor man's Josh Allen type of deal, like that type of feel to him. Now, the question is, like you said, does he have the weapons? Sort of in that same vein as Justin Herbert. Does he have the weapons? Because outside of Stephon Diggs, who's listed as questionable right now, Demario Douglas, just a guy. Kyle Williams, just a guy. Mac Hollins, just a guy. Keyshawn Booty, just a guy. Right? Fun to say, but like there's no stars if it's not Diggs, and we've seen Diggs, you know, can he stay on the field? Hunter Henry, good tight end. Is he a superstar? No, he's a possession. Austin Hooper's at the end of the road. The running game looks good with the Stevenson, Travion Henderson. Henderson took one to the house on a kick return yesterday. That looks good, but that doesn't necessarily help the fantasy numbers for your quarterback. So it's not that I don't believe in Drake May. I just wonder the weapons and talent around him. Will he be able to reach his potential with who's around him?
By the way, you brought up Herbert multiple times. I got to say before I let you go, I think the return of Keenan Allen is going to be a sneaky boost because he's the kind of possession receiver that Herbert, when he drops back and he's looking around, how many times we watched a game last year, Herbert's looking, and he almost is looking at the face. He's like, "Will somebody get open? Somebody, please. Somebody." Please. And Keenan Allen is that sneaky guy who he'll go hip to hip with a guy for 8 yards and do that little hip shove, the hip check in hockey, and get himself open for 10 yards and a first down.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a bit of a comfort blanket. I'm not buying Keenan Allen as a fantasy option, but you're right in the sense I think real world wise it's going to be nice. I'm very intrigued by the 6'3", 210 rookie Trey Harris, who they have, who's listed as a backup right now, but there is a lot of room for a star to be made. And we saw Ladd McConkey as a rookie last year ball out. He's a little banged up now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. So Trey Harris, you put him on the outside. Quentin Johnston is fine.
Well, Johnson came on at the end of the year. He came on at the end of the year. He kind of found himself near the end.
Does that continue? Does that grow? If it does, great. If not, that Trey Harris, because really the tight end spot, they punted on that one. Will Dissly, we've seen him around forever. Blocker, he can catch the odd ball. Tyler Conklin, he has never shown up, with the Jets or anything. So it's really coming down to, and then the rookie Omarion Hampton, who I want a ton of shares in fantasy football because we know the Chargers are running the ball much more so than Najee Harris almost blew his eye out with fireworks. What's with these guys in fireworks? Who's the guy? JPP blew his fingers up. Yeah. Have somebody else handle the fireworks, people. I know it's fun, but you're worth millions of dollars. Give the fireworks to someone else almost blew his eye out. Crazy.
So true.
Oh.
He's Andy McNamara, AndyMC81 on the Twitter X platform. Of course, the Sick Podcast. Like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. At Andy, was it Andy McNamara Sports or is it Andy MC Sports?
Andy MC Sports on Instagram, at AndyMC81 on X.
Gotcha. There it is.
Yeah.
Andy, tell the folks what you got going on with the Sick Podcast coming up.
Well, I'll tell you, if you're watching on the stream, you can see my sweet professional fantasy football player shirt. We have a fantasy football champion shirt. Thank you. Those are up for sale on X on my pinned tweet at AndyMC81. So you can get hooked up with that. If you're a fantasy champ or you like that shirt, there's some Buckeye and Brown stuff too. You can check that out. Also on the horse racing side, the King's Plate, the Canadian version of the Kentucky Derby is coming up this Saturday. So we have a ton of fun. And I'm not breaking down, deep dive old man with a cigar horse racing talk. Okay. You've seen the stuff, Josh. It's entertaining. We get crazy. We have fun. We have a championship belt that we're battling over. So check that out. You're going to enjoy that. And of course, lots of fantasy football talk coming up this week. And hey, with it being Eagles week, Josh, we'll talk off the air, but hopefully have you on the show this week.
Okay, we can coordinate that for sure. And of course, Andy will be joining us each week during the football season. Fantasy football season, people are getting ready, Andy, so we got to give the people the information.
Give the people what they want. And of course, hey, hashtag Ask Andy is back. So on either of those X, Instagram, hashtag Ask Andy, get your fantasy football questions in and we'll light you up, help you win your league.
Absolutely. Andy, man, talk to you soon.
All right, brother. See ya.